Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. Today's episode is presented by Imperial Pizza. Two locations, of course, the South Buffalo staple, 1035 Abbott Road, and also a newer location on Main Street near Canisius College. Some of the best food you'll get anywhere in Buffalo. Imperial Pizza. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you to everybody out there, as always, for watching and for listening, for following, for subscribing. You guys are the best. I do appreciate y'all very much. It is good to be back doing Talking Buffalo back-to-back days. Last week I was down and out with COVID. I squeezed 2 shows in, somehow felt like shit, but I'm progressively getting better. In fact, I feel pretty good, man. Throat's a little bit sore, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Today's show, I watched the All-22 game film. Some of those plays I watched a lot more than I should have. I went through the PFF grades. Most importantly, I slept on the game. You know, yesterday's show, we went live, Joe from Queens and I, literally 10 to 15 minutes after the game. And when you're doing instant reactions, it's kind of heat of the moment. You really don't have a chance to formulate a lot of thoughts. You certainly don't have a chance to go back and watch some replays. Some things you might have been right about, some things you find out that you were wrong about. So today's kind of all about my biggest Buffalo Bills week 4 takeaways. A thrashing in Baltimore, 35-10. One game. It's okay. Not happy about it, but the Bills are still 3-1. Let's not lose sight of that, folks. But that's what we're going to do today. Kind of go over my biggest takeaways, primarily from the game, but also kind of through the first 4 weeks of the season, because in some cases, I think some of these takeaways, at least to some extent, intertwine. More specifically, I want to talk about that Derrick Henry 87-yard touchdown run, because watching the film, I was really bothered. Not bothered that I was bothered that he scored a touchdown so easily. But when you watch it back on the film and you notice that 7 different Buffalo Bills were blocked successfully by 7 different Baltimore Raven offensive players, that not one guy could get off a block. Even if one of those 7 get off a block, it's probably not a touchdown. I'm going to kind of highlight who's at fault. Well, most of the defense is at fault, but I'm going to be a little more specific about that play, because to me, that play shell-shocked the Bills for pretty much for the rest of the game and really set the tone. So I want to bring up that play. I want to talk some about the Bills' backups and some of their borderline, starters. I want to talk about the offensive line, a unit that I'm still, for the record, high on. I'm very confident in the Bills' offensive line. They're good, but they were not good in Baltimore. I want to talk about them. And then kind of, like I said, some season-long takes that I've noticed to this point. Quickly, some actual news to come out of One Bills Drive later on Monday. I'm recording this early evening Monday. Sean McDermott, as he usually does, speaks to the media on Mondays. Well, at least when the Bills have a Sunday game, which they do this week. Injury news, Khalil Shakir, day-to-day with his ankle. He was in a walking boot after the games. They said they're treating him day-to-day, so that's at least promising. Taylor Rapp is in concussion protocol. There's at least a possibility that could be longer term. That looked like a pretty violent concussion he suffered on Sunday night. Thoughts and prayers, of course, with him. Did not dismiss. He was asked, Sean, and he did not dismiss the possibility of reaching out to Micah Hyde. Kind of like nothing's changed on that situation, that it's still on the table, and you know how he feels about Micah Hyde, yada, 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 yada. I think that might be a little more on the table now than it was a month ago. Let's just put it that way. I talked about Terrell Bernard improving more so than Teron Johnson. Like, Bernard could practice this week, didn't commit to either guy playing or not playing. But sounds to me like there's a better chance that Terrell Bernard's going to be on the field than Teron Johnson, which is a little surprising to me. And without anyone coming out and saying it, it feels to me like Teron might have suffered a setback at some point over the last couple of weeks. Because I thought it was really notable that he did not go on injury reserve before their week 2 game in Miami, which told me that they don't think he's going to need to miss 4 games because that's what you automatically miss if you go on IR. Well, if we don't play on Sunday, and it doesn't even sound promising that he's going to practice this week, this is the 4th game. So it makes me think that either the Bills underestimated what his injury was, or maybe they had at some point he had a setback. I don't know. I didn't think he was going to need to go on IR. Maybe he should have. Who knows? But anyway, that's like your injury report with the Bills for right now. Before I get into some of my takeaways from this week and the season so far, I want to make sure I put this in perspective because I think this is very important. Look, when you lose 35-10, when you get manhandled pretty much like the Bills did for the vast majority of that game, you're going to have negative reactions. You're going to have negative takes. If you don't, at that point, what are we doing here? Why are you having a show? If all you're going to do is talk about how great the Bills are all the time, even when they're playing like complete garbage, like for the most part they did on Sunday, I'm just not going to be that guy. I got a lot of critiques, a lot of criticism with the players and the coaches based on this game, and in some cases, a few things from the season. And I'm going to be honest. And in my opinion, at least anyway, I feel like I'm being objective and unbiased about it. But that said, I do want to keep things in perspective. All right. The Bills are 3-1 right now. And if you would have told me the day before the season started, especially with no Matt Milano, okay? If you would have told me before the season started, the Bills are going to be 3-1 after 4 games, would you have signed up for that? I'm willing to wager that if you're all being honest with yourself, everyone who's listening or watching to the show, 85 to 90% of you would have said, hell yes. 3-1, sign me up. You got a cupcake at home. This was the perception going into the season. You got a cupcake at home. You got a hell of a road game on a short week against a divisional rival that is desperate to set the standard this year and beat you in week 2. And then you come back home against a team, Jacksonville, that for whatever reason you play like dog shit against most of the time. They have your number. They always play you tough, if not beat you. They stymie the Bills offense for whatever reason. And then you got the Baltimore Ravens on the road in prime time. Those 4 games, you're signing up for 3-1. Are you taking that? I think you're crazy if you would have said no. I'd say yes in a heartbeat. And that's what the Bills are right now. The Bills are 3-1. So let's not lose sight of that, okay? And they were very impressive in getting to 3-0. All right, the leading scoring team in the NFL. So there's still a lot to like about this football team. They're 3-1. That's the one thing to keep in perspective. Here's the other thing. I think 4 weeks in, to me right now at least, and maybe some people will accuse me of having rose-colored glasses with the Bills, which I think is crazy because I'm going to spend the next 30 to 40 minutes bashing a lot of this team. But I think the Bills are the best team in the AFC East, and I'm not sure how close it is. We're not even going to count New England, all right? And I don't care what I'm recording this before Miami plays the Titans on Monday night. I'll give a shit if Miami puts 70 on the board. Doesn't matter. It's not going to change. The Bills are a better football team than Miami. Miami's got some old players. Who the hell knows who's going to be the quarterback if Tua comes back? That team, they're coaching with Mike McDaniel. I mean, come on. I'm wasting my time talking about them. The Bills are a better football team, period. And then you got the Jets. I think the New York Jets are really, really good on defense. No secrets there. But I don't think they're that good on offense. They got a couple skilled guys. Breece Hall's great. Garrett Wilson's great. Got a couple guys who can make plays. But the quarterback difference between Josh Allen and 40-some-year-old Aaron Rodgers is night and day. And there's a clear disconnect between Aaron Rodgers and Robert Saleh. That was on display Sunday. It was especially post-game. You could see they're just ready to start finger pointing, implode. It's coming. It's coming. You know it's coming. The Jets lose at home to the Denver Broncos and don't even score 10 points. Now, I know Denver's a good defense, and I know it was raining and shit at MetLife, but that's inexcusable. And I kept hearing about, oh, the Jets are so good. All they got to have is Aaron Rodgers be all right, and they're going to win. Well, Aaron Rodgers has been all right, and they're 2-2. I think the Bills are a better football team than the Jets. I think the Jets got some issues with players with age. I think they're going to have some quarterback issues, and Aaron Rodgers not moving around so good either. And I think they got a lame duck head coach. So, the Bills, who were picked as the second, if not third best team in this division a month ago, to me, are the best team. Even after how bad they looked in Baltimore, to me, I still think the Bills are the cream of the crop in the AFC East. So again, perspective here, folks. The Bills are 3-1. You would have signed up for that in a heartbeat. And the Bills, to me, are the best team in the AFC East. How much better they are than the Jets remains to be seen. But I do think they are better from 1 to 53. They are a better football team than the Jets, where the Jets are a couple star players and some finger pointers. That's what they are, with a lame duck head coach and a pretty shitty quarterback, to be honest with you. All right, anyway, got that out. That's important to say because, again, the majority of the rest of this episode is going to be calling out the Bills on their bullshit because this was a bad, bad football game. And I'm going to tell you, before even getting into any specifics about coaching or players, one thing that concerns me about the Buffalo Bills, and I said it on my previous show that I was able to do last week, and I've said it many times, actually, throughout the weeks, if not months. I think the Bills are a significantly better football team when they're underdogs. And I'm not talking about they're a 1.5 underdog in this specific game, but when the Bills have that feeling that they're the underdogs and everyone's down on them and the national media is blasting them and they're not the front runners and their quarterback is voted the most overrated player in the NFL and nobody thinks this team is going to be anything without Stephon Diggs and Trey White and Gabe Davis and Jordan Poyer and Mitch Morse and these guys that they lose, that's when the Bills always seem to play their best. When they got a huge, huge, huge chip on their shoulder. Now, I don't know they ain't going to admit it, but I think this week might have been a case where maybe they believe their hype a little bit because after starting 3-0 and being the highest scoring team in the NFL, there was a hell of a lot of hype with the Buffalo Bills. A lot. Maybe they read those headlines. I don't know. But what I know is I don't like when they're the front runners. They don't seem to play well or as well when that's the case. It's like at some point, they need to be humbled. I know they struggled through a lot of 2021 before they got hot. Last year, hell, they were 6-6. And then the Sean McDermott piece drops, and bam, people count them out. And what happens? They go on a big run. Maybe this game, and it's only week 4 and just one game. Maybe this will be that wake-up call that, hey, we ain't as good as we think we are. Because they went into this game almost, I don't know. It just looked like they played cocky. It certainly looked like, and Josh Allen even admitted it, that Baltimore it was apparent, he said early on, that Baltimore had a far bigger sense of urgency. And I certainly think that you saw it. So anyway, my whole general point is, I don't like when the Bills are front runners. If you're the national media, don't say nice shit about the Bills. Say mean things, man. Go back to saying that the Super Bowl window is closed and padlocked and whatever other stupid shit Emmanuel Acho said. Bring Nick Wright's takes in all the time. Stephen A. Smith, whoever is going to say negative shit about this team, that's when they play their best, when no one seems to believe in them. Us against, what is it, that Buffalo versus everybody mentality? Maybe that's a real thing. I don't know. In terms of coaching, okay, I want to start there, especially after watching the film and just seeing the way a lot of these plays played out. Ravens' game plan, their coaching on this night, far, far, far superior than that of the Buffalo Bills coaching staff. Period. End of story. All 3 phases: defense, offense, and the head coach. Defensively, I thought Bobby Babbage got shell-shocked. First play of the game, Derrick Henry takes it to the house. This was just a defense and a coordinator that looked shell-shocked after that for pretty much the entire first half. They didn't blitz. The defensive line didn't do anything. There were no stunts. They just sat back in a base nickel or a base 4-3 because they had to go to that at one point. Cam Lewis was so bad. And they just reacted to getting punched in the mouth. And that's all they did on defense. Like, where was the urgency? Where was the aggression in the first half? Cam Lewis, look, I like Cam Lewis, man. I am a big, big Cam Lewis fan. He's the kind of guy you root for, right? He's no blue chip guy. He's an undrafted free agent right here from UB. You love to see him make it, okay? And he's done a really good job, at least early in the season, man. Arizona, Miami, boy, was good, right? But man, he was the ultimate liability in Baltimore. He was so bad at one point, they had to get him off the field for Nick Morrow. And sure enough, Nick Morrow comes on. And again, this is where coaching comes in. Baltimore realizes that. First plays on the field, bam, play action pass to his side, successful. 2 plays later, same thing. They run out to his side, touchdown pass, swing, easy touchdown. Dude was out there for like 16 snaps, 3 targets against him, 3 catches, 40 yards, just won it. Big credit to Baltimore's OC. It's Todd Moken. He had a great game plan against the Bills. Just going to be physical. And then when you can't have Cam Lewis out there anymore, you have to go to Nick Morrow. And they threw the ball successfully. It was actually, again, if you're you don't have no horse in the race, you're just watching it. It was kind of fun to watch. But back to the Bills and Babbage, man. The game plan should have been run blitz like crazy. Okay, bring guys up in the box. Lamar Jackson's great. Okay, he's a 2-time MVP. I don't want to take anything away from him. Too many people take things away from this guy, and it's freaking ridiculous. Okay, that said, you got Lamar with his legs, and you got Derrick Henry. You got to force Lamar to beat you with his arm. That's got to be the game plan. You got to bring more guys up into the box. You got to show looks. You got to try to confuse them. You got to bring blitzers, whether it's up the edge, whether it's up the middle, whatever it takes. And if Lamar beats you, and he very well might with his arm, then you tip your cap to him, man. If he's got big days, the tight ends, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, who, I don't know, by all reports, used to be a good football player at one point. I don't know what the hell happened to him. Let these receivers work in the middle of the field. Justice Hill coming out of the backfield, whatever it's going to be. Let him beat you with the arm. If he does, congratulations. But they didn't. They just sat back, especially in the first half. Baltimore ran in this game for 271 yards on 34 carries, 8 yards a pop. And even if you take out the 87-yard touchdown in one play, that's still almost 200 yards of rushing, even not counting that play. The only success the Bills defense had this entire game, third quarter. And what happened when they had some success? It's because they got more aggressive. I think Braylon Spector got to him on a third down blitz once. Jordan Williams had a couple nice plays. They blitzed more. They had back-to-back stops. It's the only success they had the whole game. So I thought it was a bad job, at least in the first half, by Bobby Babbage, just content to sit there and kind of get punched in the mouth and not even really fight back. Now, of course, it's about the players too, and they stunk, a lot of them. We'll talk about them in a few minutes. Other side of the football, look, Joe Brady, he was awful. Okay, he was awful. Highlighted, of course, by one of the worst, most disastrous trick play calls you'll ever see. It's it's 21-3. The Bills finally scores 21-10. The Bills defense gets another stop. They got a punt. Bills take over at the 19. They're driving. They get 4 plays to the Baltimore 44. It's 2nd and 7, which, by the way, is not even a running play. It's pretty much a passing play. And then he just dials up one of the worst calls you will ever see. Like, that's a play call. If you're going to do something stupid like that, 2 things. Number one, maybe you call that like on 2nd and 2 or like 3rd and 1 if you know you're going to go for it on 4th down. When they're really stuffed up for the run and you're thinking like Curtis Samuel might actually run out of the Wildcat, which is kind of like the other thing there. Like, who did you think you were fooling? This whole season, the Bills have not run the Wildcat once. Like, maybe if earlier in the game you run the Wildcat, whether it's Curtis Samuel, whether it's Cook, whether it's Ty Johnson, I don't give a shit who it is. One of those guys catch the ball with Josh Allen split out and they actually run a couple times and you have a little bit of success. Maybe Baltimore brings more guys into that box and they're thinking you're going to run the football. But you didn't even try to do that. You didn't even show them that. And if you watch the film, which you know the Ravens obviously do, Josh Allen literally wasn't even split out once his entire season. So you don't think their antennas went up right away? That is just insanity to me, man. Insanity. Now, to Joe Brady's credit, he completely on Monday utterly took all the accountability for it. Time and time again, he talked about it. He said that they play essentially, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but ultimately cost him the game. I wouldn't go quite that far. I still don't think the Bills would have won even if they don't call that play. But you never know. I mean, they get to a 1-score game, the Ravens, you know how they are in the fourth quarter of close games. But yeah, it was just awful. That said, I'm going to chill a little bit because I think Joe Brady's been borderline genius the first 3 weeks of the season. Again, this is the highest scoring team in the NFL coming into this game. I'm going to give him a pass, so to speak. Well, maybe not pass because you can't do stupid shit like that. But what I will say is this: I have not lost my confidence in Joe Brady at all. But man, that was a historically stupid call. There's just no reason for it. And nothing that you did to set it up that suggests that the Bills were going to actually run the football out of that formation. To me, that's the biggest thing. Other things with the offense too, just James Cook, just 9 carries. I don't like that. I know the Bills were down, but you got to run the ball. And then they were having, again, that drive leading up to it. James Cook had 3 straight carries, just 9 for the game. That's not enough. And maybe even so more than the running game, only 1 target in the passing game. James Cook, even though he'll drop a ball now and then, he's a weapon in the passing game. I'd say James Cook's been their best weapon this season outside of Josh Allen. So you got to find ways to get the football in his hands. You just do. And then, coaching wise, we're a month in the season now. Cannot find a proper way to utilize Curtis Samuel. More on him shortly. And they didn't find a last thing with Brady and the coaching. They just couldn't come up with a scheme to kind of effectively slow down Kyle Van Noy, which is a little bit surprising because the Bills historically do really good at identifying a game wrecker and doing a really good job of containing them. They've done it this year. They shut Jalen Phillips down with Miami. They shut both Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker down last week with the Jags. Van Noy was a huge factor. Had 2 sacks in this game. I believe he had the strip fumble too, as well. So just a bad day for Babbage, a bad day for Brady, and a bad day for Sean McDermott. I mean, let's just keep it real here. I had a problem with him punting twice in the first half. The fourth and a yard and a half from the 50 and the first drive of the game. I didn't like that at all. You get the ball, you got to be aggressive. You got to make a statement right off the bat, just like they did in Miami when they went for it on 4th and 3 inside the 20. Now, I get it. He's probably thinking if we don't convert, we're still around the 20-yard line or whatever. But it's not really that different, the principle about being aggressive and setting the tone early on. Now, in fairness, if you're going to be pissed about McDermott going for or not going for it on the first drive of the game, take some of that anger, 50% of that anger maybe, and put it on Dalton Kincaid. Because you know what? Maybe don't drop a 3rd and 2 pass that hits you in the hands. You got to make that catch, man. Got to make that catch. And then again, they're down 14-3 and they punt from 4th and 1.5 from their own 39. I think Sean's mindset when it comes to those types of things is if Josh Allen can get it with a tush push, he's going to go for it every single time. But if that's kind of like out of range for him, then he hesitates a little bit. Now, look, again, just like with Joe Brady and Babbage, you've been good this year. Sean McDermott's been really good. I have praised him profusely this season. But that aggressive play calling like he did in Miami, like I said, going for stuff like that, you just instill confidence in your team. You inspire confidence in your team when you go for it. That annoys me that they didn't. Because let's just say, and we'll never know, but let's just say the Bills go for it on that first series and they get it and they go up, whether, I don't even know if it's just 3 points. You set the tone, you show confidence. Yeah, we're going into Baltimore, a hostile environment, a very respected defense, and we're going to go for it on 4th down. And we get points on the board. That's how we start the football game. Maybe it's a different game. They don't. They punt. That shows, a little bit of timidness. And then the defense gets punched in the mouth on the very first play of the game. Bam, we're off to the races. So that really resonated with me in the specific game. Anyway, all right, we're going to take a real quick break. Come back. I got some individual stuff and some additional stuff that I want to get into as well. All right, I am back here going over my personal biggest takeaways from the Buffalo Bills week 4, I guess we'll call it debacle in Baltimore, a couple season things as well. The Derrick Henry 87-yard touchdown run, all right, first play of the game. To me, that's like everything that you could possibly not like about the Bills defense pretty much all reared its ugly head on one play. And yeah, it sucks to watch Henry go 87 yards, essentially untouched for a touchdown. But when you watch it back on the all 22 several times, I noticed something that, again, in real time, I didn't really pay much attention to, or even in the post game last night. But 7 different Bills defenders were all blocked successfully by 7 different Baltimore blockers. Not a single double team. None. Which tells me not one single Bill won his one-on-one rep, because if any of them did, that's probably not a touchdown. I'm going to be more specific just with this one play. The right guard goes out. I'm sorry, maybe it was a left guard. It was a left guard. Left guard handles Daquan Jones one-on-one, stands him right up, seals him out of the play. The fullback, Picard, comes in, cleanly picks him at Oliver, completely takes him out of the play. The right tackle successfully ties up Groot, allowing Henry to get right through that gap. So that's your defensive line right there. 3 guys, one-on-one, all successfully blocked, one of them by a fullback, okay? Which then that now allows the center and the right guard to get out to that second level, and they get a helmet on Dorian Williams and Braylon Spector, respectively, and completely take both of them out of the play. All right. Meanwhile, Cam Lewis, who's on the right side, is late to recognize the play, doesn't take a good angle. Rasul Douglas, who was split out to the left, I don't know what he was thinking on this one specific play, but he was way too wide. And by the time he recognized that Henry had the ball, if you didn't know any better, you would think he didn't really want to hit him. Like, he didn't want to meet him in that lane. I'm not saying that's the case. I believe Russell. I'm not saying he's afraid of that smoke. But it looks like it on the tape. Like, he didn't really want too much of that. But anyway, he's real late getting into the play. And bam, he's through. Taylor Rapp tries to come up. Mark Andrews, the tight end, easily blocks him. So he's out of the picture. Like I said, Cam Lewis just late and not fast enough to get there. And then Damar Hamlin, really late to recognize. Horrible angle, and just simply doesn't have the athleticism to make up for a mistake. Damar's not that guy where if he makes a mistake, he can make up for it with his athleticism. He's just not going to do it. So bam, to the house, 87-yard touchdown. That was a horrible, horrible play for the Buffalo Bills. Again, 7 dudes getting blocked one-on-one. Both your linebackers, your safety, and all 4 linemen essentially taken out of the play by one-on-one blocks. It was freaking ugly. I'm concerned about the Bills' defense against these bigger, strong, physical teams, or not even necessarily big physical. There's not a lot of Derrick Henrys in the NFL. Just teams that are willing to run the football. I mean, in fairness to the Bills, the stats have looked really good, but if we're being honest with ourselves, Arizona, early in that game when they went up 17-3, they were having a lot of success running the football. And then they got artsy-fartsy. That's the word I like to use. They got too cute. They got away from that. To some extent, ditto in Miami. Like, the Bills were having some issues, not huge issues, but, Devon Achane was doing his thing against the Bills. And then they decided to put the ball more into his hands. And the Bills made him pay for that. Now, Jacksonville just couldn't get anything going, period. The Bills' defense was swarming in Orchard Park on Monday night. But we've seen teams have success running against the Bills and just kind of get away from it. Baltimore wasn't going to make that mistake. And I'll tell you what, and you know this, it's a copycat league. And we're going to see more of this shit, I bet. I'll bet you anything. Now, again, of course, every team doesn't have the threat, a dual threat of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. But I think you're going to see teams, maybe Houston, certainly the Jets, a lot of these other teams on the schedule, they're going to try to get physical with the Bills and commit more to the running game than Arizona and Miami did in the first 2 weeks. In terms of the backups on defense, look, this was the game. You knew it was coming. You knew it was coming. Sooner or later, not having Teron Johnson and Terrell Bernard out there, it was going to catch up to them. This was the game where it did. Again, going back to Cam Lewis, man, he was really great the first 2 weeks, especially against Arizona. Holy shit, did he come on and do a great job. He was special that game. and I like him. And you could do worse than Cam Lewis. Well, you could do worse than having Cam Lewis on your roster. Let's put it that way. I don't know that you could do worse than having Cam Lewis play nickel the way he did against Baltimore, because that was as bad as it gets. Braylon Spector was great against Jacksonville. He was anything but great in Baltimore. They were both disasters. These are the replacements for two, for one all-pro slot corner and for one Pro Bowl caliber middle linebacker, and they've held their own. But maybe it was just too big of an ask to do it against Baltimore, because it really showed. Cam Lewis whiffed on several tackles, 4 of them per PFF, and I feel like it could have been more, including a really backbreaking third down. The back end of that ridiculously stupid trick play call where the Bills lost the ball. So Baltimore's got the ball now. It's 21-10. They're facing a third and kind of long. And if the Bills could get a stop, they hold Baltimore to a field goal attempt. Man, it's not even a given that Justin Tucker makes it. But even if he does, it's 24-10. You're like, oh, Jesus, I can't believe how stupid we are. All right, plenty of time, 2-touchdown game. Let's get back into this. A ball gets swung out. God, I can't remember now if it was Zay Flowers or Justice Hill. I don't remember. Doesn't really matter. But anyway, Cam Lewis has him dead to rights, and he whiffs. Misses the tackle, and Baltimore picks up the first down directly because Cam Lewis misses the tackle. A couple plays later, Baltimore scores. Bam, 28-10. That's a wrap on the game. Point being, this is what you got from Cam Lewis the entire night. Per PFF, 27.8 PFF overall grade. That is one of the worst overall grades for a starter that I've ever seen in a handful of years that I've actually been paying significant attention to PFF grading. And I know PFF is not always the most accurate thing in the world. But in this case, it feels really accurate because Cam Lewis had one of the worst games that I've ever seen from a Buffalo Bills starting defender. 29.1 run grade, 26.5 tackle grade, 29.5 coverage grade. Again, he was charged with missing 4 tackles. He was just simply outgunned and outmatched on this day. Simple as that. If Teron Johnson doesn't get back this week, and it doesn't sound too promising, and I'm Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich, I am given incredibly, incredibly strong consideration to seeing what Jamarcus Ingram could do in that spot. Just simple as that. As for Spector, he just looked out of his league, man. Pretty much in every way imaginable, especially in the first half. There was one play, it was in the second quarter. Maybe it was the third. I don't remember. The fullback, Picard, who again, he stood at Oliver up too early in the game, but he took Spector and blocked him like almost out of the stadium on one play. Must have blocked him for 20 yards consecutive down the field. 37.3 overall PFF grade, 45.1 run, 38.1 coverage. He was not good. He had a couple plays in the second half. Again, he's a gamer, and I like him. And these are good depth guys to have on your roster. If you got to come in and you got to spell your starter for a while, which they've done successfully well, that's a sign of good depth. But when you're asking these guys week after week after week against good teams to go out there and hold the fort, I just feel like you're asking for too much. And that dam broke in this game with, 2 quality starters out. Other side of the football, I'll take away, and I want to be clear, my opinion about the Bills' offensive line has not changed at all. It was just a bad night at the office because they were really bad on Sunday night. I still think they were a solid unit, but they were bad. Josh got pressured on like 15 of his 34 dropbacks, which is terrible. By far the worst of the season. It was a rough night for Spencer Brown, who hadn't even given up a pressure through the first 3 weeks. He gave up his first sack, got called for a holding, low pass blocking grade, like 56.6. Not a great night for Deion Dawkins. He's the one who whiffed on that botched trick play, which I don't know how much I put on him specifically for that play. That everything about that play was just freaking doom. Which, by the way, even if Deion Dawkins does block the guy, and even if Samuel gets it off to Josh Allen clean, it was a 2-person route, and the design was to go deep to Mac Hollins, who was double covered. And then Keon Coleman was somewhere in the middle of the field, who was not going to be open either. Anyway, Deion Dawkins, not a good game for him. Connor McGovern got smoked early on. I remember tweeting about that. Also got hurt. Then came back in the game. Then they made him leave. Fortunately, he came back. He was all right. 55.7 pass block grade. Osiris Torrance, a guy who I am continuously not as high on as a lot of others. He got smoked a handful of times. One specifically, oh my God, it looked like a pylon out there. He had a 54.8 pass block grade. So again, offensive line, a shitty night, but not enough to make me think that they're still not good, because I still do think that they are plenty good. Before I get out of here, I got a couple takes that are kind of reflective, both of Sunday night's game and also like the first month of the season. The biggest one is this. I think the Bills, if they didn't already, and if you didn't already recognize this, I think the Bills have a major, major safety problem. I especially think they have a major Damar Hamlin problem. He was awful against the Ravens. And I heard other podcasts and content creators, and they want to be, understandably so, a little more selective on how they describe his game, saying he didn't play well. I'm just going to be honest with all you. I'm going to take it one step further. I thought he was awful, terrible. Maybe if it weren't for Cam Lewis, he was the worst player on the field, okay? But the difference is Cam Lewis is filling in, trying to fill in. This is your day one starting free safety, Damar Hamlin. A 40.7 overall grade from PFF, which again, I get the PFF hate when the grades are bad and people love them when they're good. But this grade feels accurate. A 40.7 overall, 41 tackle, 43.7 coverage, 2 missed tackles. It felt like 9. Just, he's not it, man. He is not a starter to me. He's not. Okay. This is my take on Damar Hamlin, my honest take on him. Damar Hamlin is a rosterable player. Okay. He is depth. He is what he was last year. On a good football team, he should be your 4th or 5th safety. It's as simple as that. He's a great story. He's a generational, hopefully once in a lifetime story, because hopefully we never see anything like that again. I ain't taking away from any of that. I promise you that. That interception he had last week was an incredible moment. It made me feel amazing. It made his teammates feel amazing. It made 70,000 people in that stadium feel amazing. People around the world watching, amazing. I ain't going to take away any of that on a human level. Okay? On a football level, Trevor Lawrence airmailed a ball 10 yards over the head of a wide open Brian Thomas Jr. into the waiting arms of Damar Hamlin, who was 10 yards behind a wide open Brian Thomas Jr. From a football perspective, it's the easiest interception anyone's ever going to have. Okay? Let's differentiate humanity from football here, okay? And I'm not one of those colluder, those people, and this pisses me off as much as anything else with Damar Hamlin. People who think he's on the Buffalo Bills because he almost died. People who think that his conspiracy or his popularity, that's bullshit as well. Damar Hamlin is on the Buffalo Bills, especially this year, because he's one of the best 4 or 5 safeties on this roster. Okay? He's not a bad football player. Again, to me, he's a rosterable football player. He's not a pity party story. He's not on the Buffalo Bills, again, because he almost died. It's not a marketing ploy. The Bills don't need to sell tickets. I promise you that, by having Damar Hamlin on their football team. Maybe if Russ Brandon was the GM and the head coach, maybe that's why Damar Hamlin would be on the football team in those days. That's not the case, all right? He's a good dude. And he's not a bad football player in terms of being a rosterable guy. But he's your 4th or 5th guy. He is not your week 1 starting free safety. With the only real injuries being a Mike Edwards and Cole Bishop coming back, I should say, from injuries, he was the day 1 starter on day 1 of training camp. That's been the Bills' plan essentially since July. And I think it's ridiculous. And I think it's ridiculous because he's just not a very good football player in terms of starting caliber. And you see it. He's not physical enough. He's not athletic enough. And he doesn't have, I'm not gonna say he's stupid. He's certainly not a stupid person, but his football range and IQ out there is not good enough for him to make up for any physical shortcomings that he might have. Micah Hyde was not the greatest athlete in Buffalo Bills history. He was not the greatest safety athletically the Bills have ever had. What made Micah Hyde a special safety is his intelligence, his knowing where the football is going to be, his ability to be around the football, his ability to take a good angle so that a 20-yard gain doesn't become an 87-yard gain. That's one of the many differences between them. As a starter, I think Damar Hamlin absolutely stinks. As a football player on the roster, I think he's going to have to be on the roster. And as a human being, I think he's an amazing person. But let's just call it what it is at this point. He's not, I've heard people say he's fine. He's not fine, okay? Even last year's borderline washed up Jordan Poyer and shell of what he was, Micah Hyde, last year's versions of them are still significantly better to me than what you're seeing from Damar Hamlin. The difference is your boy ain't been tested until this game. You can watch the film. They barely even have tested Hamlin or Rapp for that matter, man. Just too many shortcomings with this guy, man. He'll get a couple stops in the box, coming up, crowding the run, stuff like that. At this point, I am befuddled that it hasn't been Mike Edwards' time. Mike Edwards, an early free agent signing. I know he was hurt, and he's got some shortcomings too. We saw that Arizona game. He got blown past on a kick return. He hasn't been active since. So I don't know, man. And I'm not very high on Taylor Rapp, and this was before the injury. And I like Cole Bishop, but he's a rookie. If I'm Brandon Beane or if I'm Sean McDermott, I am on the phone and I'm calling Micah Hyde. I know that sounded silly a month ago. I don't think it's silly anymore. Get him up to speed for a couple weeks because, again, you're not getting 2021 All-Pro Micah Hyde, but I think 2023 Micah Hyde, if he's what he was last year, is still better than 2024 Damar Hamlin. The Bills got a safety problem. Simple as that. And you know what else the Bills have a problem with? The Bills have a veteran defensive line that's just way too inconsistent. That's a problem too. All right? Keep it shit real here, man. Groot was the AFC Defensive Player of the Week 1 against Arizona. He was unstoppable. He was a monster. He's been so-so since in a no-show in Baltimore. Let's just be real. Ed Oliver. You know how I feel about Ed Oliver. Absent against Arizona, a monster against Miami. He was fantastic against Miami. Whatever against Jacksonville. And again, a no-show in Baltimore. I see some people on social media, I'm not going to go this far, but they call him Little Game Ed. I think the concept of that makes sense. This guy has some really good games, usually against crappy teams, or at least early in the season, and then disappears in the biggest moments. He was a no-show on Sunday, as was his battery mate, Daquan Jones, too. And I like Daquan, but look, he's going to be 33 years old in December. And if we're being honest with ourselves here, last year, the first month of the season, before he tore his pec, Daquan Jones, to me, and I made arguments about this on the show, was probably the defensive MVP of this team through the first month. This year, we're a month into the season, Daquan Jones has been completely irrelevant. Completely. Look at this game in Baltimore. Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, two of your most highest paid, respected veteran players on this football team. 77 snaps between both of them. One assisted tackle for the entire game. That's it. One assisted tackle between both of them. That's just not acceptable. You should be, and by the way, Baltimore is also missing a starting guard for this game. Voorhees didn't even play. All right. Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, if you don't get them both going, at least one of them got to get going. And to go an entire football game, two guys who are as good as these guys are or supposed to be, and at times they are, two guys who are as looked up upon on this football team as they are, two guys who are financially compensated the way they are, you got to have some form of imprint on a football game. And to play 77 snaps between both of you and only have one assisted tackle, and that's it for the entire game, that's ludicrous. That is utterly unacceptable. Beyond that, Epinesa was all right. Stupid penalty, retaliation penalty. That's the way it always goes. Two Hills just out there. He's another guy. Dwayne Carter's just another guy, which kind of sucks because the Bills traded down twice. They wanted that third round pick. You go get Dwayne Carter early in the season, rookie year. I'm not going to sweat it yet, but a month in, I'd like to see Dwayne Carter do something. He's been MIA right now to this point, right? And then Von Miller, I thought Von's been excellent the first 3 games. Only played 9 snaps in Baltimore. I ain't mad at him. That's not his fault. That's a product of what happens when you're down the whole game and the Ravens they don't got to throw the football much, right? So just a very inconsistent defensive line this season for the most part. Again, led by a pair of tackles who just simply got to give you something. You can't go in prime time on the road. I don't care who you're playing. You can't go 60 minutes, both your tackles, and combine to give you nothing. And that's what they got. And that's really annoying. Curtis Samuel, what are we doing here? It seems like the Bills, yet again, with this type of player, have no clue how to use him, what to do with him. 8 catches for 48 yards in 4 games, 2 carries for 7 yards. I mean, what is that? What is that? It's like they got him and they just want him to be nothing but a gadgety player. Like, how about playing him at wide receiver more? I'm watching Matt Collins and MBS run useless routes. How about getting Curtis Samuel out there and actually running some real routes? I don't get it. I don't know why. I just don't get it. I know he's bothered by turf toe near the end of the preseason. Maybe that's lingered more than we think, but I just don't get it when it comes to him. And I don't get why the Bills continue to year after year after year to get these guys on this team who just, in theory, they feel like fits, and then it never works out. These gadgety guys, Deontay Hardy, Isaiah McKenzie, once they actually asked him to have a significant role on this team. Naheem Hines, year after year after year with these guys, it's the same results. And I was wondering from the moment that he signed with the Bills, Samuel, I'm like, how are both he and Khalil Shakir going to both work together in this offense? They're both slot guys, right? I figure, all right, well, they're going to move Shakir outside more. They're going to move Samuel out more. They're going to move Samuel around, do a bunch of things. But they're doing a bunch of nothing with him, which, I said he's got 8 catches. Well, guess what? That's 5 more catches than big money Dawson Knox has this year. Dawson Knox, 1 target in Baltimore, no catches. And I get it. You got Kincaid now and you mix things up, formations, but we're 4 games in and Dawson Knox has 3 catches for 30 yards on the season. I didn't expect him to come out week after week and have big games, but I thought there might have been a game or two where Dawson Knox might have 3 catches for 30 yards on a drive or maybe a quarter. He's got 3 catches for 30 yards in 4 games. I mean, what are we doing with him? And then the last thing on my notes, my takeaways on the negative side is Tyler Bass, who just yanked another one to the left. I mean, he's got to figure it out because I really don't know what to do. Who trusts him at this point? Obviously, we don't. Media doesn't. Fans don't. I'm not sure his coaches do. But it's like, what do you do? Is there a kicker out there who's better than him? Who's available? Because if there is, I feel like he would at least be on the practice squad by now. I know they've worked out a couple guys a couple weeks ago. Who knows? They might sign someone to a practice squad this week. I wouldn't hate it if they did. Send this guy a message. I don't know. Keep kind of nurturing his confidence, and it doesn't seem to be working because these misses are bad misses. Bad misses. Will Brandon Beane be that guy to trade for a kicker? Go find a shit team with a good kicker and maybe make a deal before the deadline? I don't know. But I do know this. It has that inevitable feeling that there's going to be a close game at some point during this season, and hopefully it's the regular season, where Tyler Bass misses a kick that's going to prove to be critical. Quickly here before we get out of here, and this is a longer show, but I had a lot to say. Plus, this is fun, man. Give me a break. I missed most of last week. Couple bright spots. Dorian Williams, I thought he played pretty damn well, despite some mistakes. I mean, he's far from perfect, not a clean game by any means, but you can't expect that with him right now. I like the fact he felt like one of the few guys really willing to take on Derrick Henry and be physical with him. He had a couple nice tackles on him, almost a hit out of bounds, or he tackled him out of bounds. He wasn't afraid of him. You could see that. Yeah, I liked it. He had a big 3rd down stop in the 3rd quarter. I believe he also punched that ball out on the one Lamar Jackson fumble. So some promising returns from Dorian Williams. I liked him. Keon Coleman, I say a bright spot, a kind of like a mixed bag because I'm still pissed off. It was just an absolutely terrible, inexcusable, costly drop for the Bills down the field late in the 2nd quarter. Josh has to be able to trust you, especially when your receivers as a whole are as inept as the Bills are right now. But he made 2 really nice box out catches down the left sideline in the 3rd quarter. 1 for 24, 1 from 21, 3 catches in the second half. That's encouraging because I think the Bills, ready or not, and I thought Keon Coleman was going to be a guy who started really slow and maybe as the season went on would ramp up a little bit. I've changed my mind. I'm getting to a point where I think the Bills need this guy, like starting Sunday in Houston, because Matt Collins will get you a slant catch for 7 yards, MBS ain't doing shit. So you pretty much got Khalil Shakir and Keon Coleman at wide receiver. Not much else, especially if Curtis Samuel ain't going to do shit either. And now you got Khalil Shakir questionable with an ankle injury day to day or whatever you want to call it. So it's time for Keon Coleman to step up. And what I saw in the second half, at least, to me was a little bit encouraging. Then last but not least, it almost feels like it should go on without saying at this point, Christian Bedford. 1 target in this game, no catches allowed. Your boy's given up 5 catches for 27 yards this season. Not in a game or two, this season. That's stupid. Quarterback rating against him this year is like 15. Your boy's become one of the best corners in the NFL. I don't know how much longer we can keep calling him underrated or a secret weapon because I feel like it's going to get out around the league. He's just straight up taking away a receiver or one half of the field on an almost weekly basis. Kind of like when Trey White was an all-pro caliber player who didn't get a lot of flashy plays. He just shut a half of the field down. Kind of feels like what Christian Benford is. Look, going forward, every team it sucks. It sucks. But every team in this league, a week-to-week league, has a game or a couple games like the Bills did on Sunday night. Nothing goes right. You get punched in the mouth. You get shook, shell-shocked. The coaches freeze up a little bit. The players freeze up. Some really stupid mistakes. And then, bam, you're on the wrong end of a blowout. It just happens. How you bounce back is going to be not just important, but also fun to watch. You know, this new leadership of the Buffalo Bills is going to be facing some adversity for the first time this season, this week. And in the past, when the Bills struggled, you felt like, all right, man, you still got Poyer, Hyde, Trey, Gabe Davis. Say what you want about Stephon Diggs. You could throw him in there too as well. Mitch Morse. Lots of leaders on this team in the locker room that are gone. And now these guys are going to step up this week. We're going to start to see what kind of leadership this team has because they do have now some adversity. They've had injuries to overcome, and now they got an ass whooping at the hands of the Baltimore Ravens to overcome. I said it before the start before the past game, and a lot of people didn't like it, but I said it, and I'm going to say it again. Before you go on the road, and you're playing on the road, all of them, Baltimore, Houston, the Jets, because you started out 3-0, I said, give me one. One of these next 3 on the road and get me to 4-2. If you get me to 4-2 with Tennessee at home in week 7, I'm all over that. They already lost the first. So to me, it would still be successful. If they can go get one in the next 2, obviously you would prefer to beat the Jets. If you can only win one, you prefer to beat the Jets over Houston. But win one of these next 2, and you're 4-2, almost certainly going to be 5-2 after you beat Tennessee at home, and you're fine. You're fine. But you lose them both. Now you're 3-3, and it's a whole new season, and you've lost 3 straight on the road against 3 teams. And not only is the league questioning you, you might question yourself. So to me, it's really important that they're able to bounce back. I'm going to reiterate what I said at the beginning of this podcast. I do think the Bills are absolutely the best team in the AFC East. And I'm not being a homer. I objectively mean that. They're better than Miami. Don't even talk about New England. And I think they're a better football team than the Jets because of quarterbacking and coaching. I think that matters. Quarterbacks and coaches kind of matter in the NFL. And I just watched the Jets score 9 points against the Denver Broncos and lose at home. So miss me with how good the Jets are right now, okay? So I still think the Bills are the best team. And I do think most of the things that are wrong with this team right now will work themselves out. I think Joe Brady's going to be fine. I think Bobby Babbitt is going to be fine. Even though I ranted on the defensive line, I think they're going to improve. They'll get their shit together. There's too much talent and veteran talent on that unit to not work itself out. I think you're going to get Johnson and Bernard back, and I think the defense will benefit greatly from that. I think the offensive line is going to be fine. They'll have a couple bad games, but they're going to be fine. But I do think the Bills have a legitimate safety problem, and I think the Bills have a legitimate wide receiver problem. And I'll say this about Brandon Beane. Some of these important decisions that he made this offseason early on ain't looking so great in some of these areas right now. Again, you gave $8 million to Curtis Samuel. You went with MVS and Hollins and really didn't do much else. You want to count Tyrell Shavers as competition? Chase Claypool as competition? No. Amari Cooper, there's rumors that he could be available, and there's already tied to the Chiefs. Good reason. They lose Rashee Rice. They lose Hollywood Brown. I get it. Bills might want to try to be players if there's a wide receiver trade market that goes. Because right now, I don't know that Curtis Samuel is going to be anything more than Deontay Hardy or Isaiah McKenzie was to this football team. I don't give a shit how much money he makes. Brandon, besides Mike Edwards, that this dude is not active a month into the season now. Like, what are we doing? That's going to change this week, I would assume, with Taylor Rapp out. But at this point, after looking at what I saw from Damar Hamlin, Mike Edwards should not just be active. Mike Edwards should be starting alongside Cole Bishop in Houston on Sunday. And then the other thing, like I said, being traded down, man, twice to get that third round pick. Wanted Dwayne Carter. When is that guy going to start mattering? Early on, it meant nothing. Bottom line is this: the Bills better be ready. And there's one team out there that ain't feeling no sympathy from them. That's the Houston Texans. Because if nothing else, Stephon Diggs is going to want to step on the throats of the Buffalo Bills this week. Anyway, all right, that's going to do it, and I'm going to get out of here. Tomorrow, I got Matt Moran on from SB Nation. We'll talk some Buffalo Bills stuff, focus a little more on his defensive line. I kind of want to circle back to him with that. And also, we'll talk about some of these other teams around the AFC, who's for real and who are just pretenders. So that'll be on tomorrow's show. Plenty of stuff coming up, including the Buffalo Sabres opening up their season on Friday. We'll have a preview for that later in the week as well. Till then, though, talk to you guys tomorrow.